Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe it's the 174th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and listening and being a part of the show, asking questions, all of that stuff. We appreciate it. Today I have with me the Boston Herald, Steve Conroy. Steve, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As always, of course. And we should also have the Boston Globe's Conor Ryan coming on. He's a little late jumping on this Friday morning, but I'm sure he's going to come on with us at some point soon. So we'll have both of those guys, Boston Globe and Boston Herald, along with me talking about the Bruins and the state of the Bruins right now, which is not very great. But before we get into the Bruins, let's talk about our sponsors a little bit, who are great. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. We also have Game Time with us. They're back with us, and if you need any kind of tickets whatsoever, go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase of sports tickets, comedy tickets, theater tickets, concert tickets, any of that stuff. Terms do apply, of course, but again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Steve?
It would be game time.
It would be game time. Excellent delivery right there, my friend. All right, let's get into it really quick. Pattern developing. We talked about this before the show started. This to me is just an indictment of kind of the talent and being light on talent on the roster right now, and the players that left at the trade deadline, bringing new guys in, not having the caliber of player that you did some of the guys you traded away, bringing up some young players, like all this stuff translates into, I think, what we've seen play out in these games, which is decent first periods, decent starts to games. They look like, it's kind of back and forth a little bit for the first 20 minutes. They get to the second period with the long change, and as the game starts to wear on, you start to see the cracks develop, and, they start to give up some goals, and it just gets progressively worse as the game is going on because they frankly just can't compete with some of these really good teams right now, given what they're rolling out. And there's nothing you can really do to help it. That's just where they are right now after trading away the players they did at the deadline and sort of going the retooling route. It is amazing to me that what are they still like? Hey, Conor Ryan has joined us as well. Thanks for joining us, Conor. It's amazing to me, Steve, that they're still like, I think within like 3 points, I guess right now of a wild card spot, just based on the way things are. Montreal now looks like they're in that, surprisingly has found their way into a playoff spot.
Yeah.
But like, it's just, they sink further and further down, and it's tough to watch, but I think this is what we all thought was going to happen in the last month of the season once the trade deadline passed.
Yeah. I mean, you watch these games and there's a lot of want to, there's just not any can do with this team. They came out well last night. It seems like that first line has a good shift. They buzz a little bit, and then as you get further and further down the lineup. It's just, you got guys who've spent most of their careers in the AHL. Trying to beat one of the best teams in the NHL, and it's just not going to work. I mean, we knew this was going to happen. I have a hard time getting apoplectic about them getting smoked these days. This is part of the game plan. I think they want to see their guys be competitive, but they know there's only so much they can do. And at the end of the day, I'm sure they'd like the better draft pick.
Yeah, no, at this point, you're right. The more games they lose, it's better off for them because they'll get a higher first round pick or a better chance at a higher first round pick. And they'll certainly, looks like they will be in the top 10, or they should be anyway. So, and the pressure then goes on to the Donnie and the scouts to hit on that player. They have to hit on whoever this player is going to be after doing this and this happening at the second half of the season. Conor, your just thoughts on what we've seen the last few games and just kind of this team not quite being ready for prime time to compete. And, It seemed even Joe Sacco, maybe even as close as last week, that especially that Ottawa loss I'm thinking of, was still having a tough time sort of with the way the team was coming out, some of the losses. But I think even reality has set in for him as to what he's watching and just trying to coax the best out of a team that doesn't have the depth and talent right now to compete with other teams. And it shows pretty much every game they're going out there.
Yeah, I mean, to what Steve said, it's, I just don't think they really have the horses right now to, again, you can have stretches where you can show the effort, but you just don't have the talent level or the personnel just to keep up with teams. Especially, you look at that game against Vegas, they just are in a different plane, a different tier in terms of what their roster makeup is compared to a team like that.
Yep.
It is funny how Bruce Cassidy-led team has a homegrown guy like Dorofeyev has now 30 goals, which is kind of funny that works out there out in Vegas. But no, but I do think you look at just the way the team is playing. Is it really surprising when you look at just the complete teardown you had during the deadline? Like, it was great they got those 2 wins out of the gate, right, against Florida and Tampa Bay. You're feeling good about, is this team going to, be competitive down the stretch or do anything like that? But I think, as you said, reality is setting in that the roster is what it is. And right now, I think when you've got these, 12 games left in the season, it's all about just trying to identify whether it's the newcomers that you've brought in at the deadline, whether they have greater roles they can step into, or maybe younger players like a Lysell. Like, you now have this window that the Bruins are not usually, have at this time of the year with 12 games where you're either looking to prioritize your draft pick or seeing what you have in maybe some of these younger players. At this point, it's all about looking forward to next year and which guys you can identify right now that maybe can be part of the equation next year as you try to claw out of what has been a pretty miserable season.
Yeah, one thing I will say, watching the game last night, is I think the state of the roster right now and the state of the team right now, and the rest of this season, David Pastrnak needs to shoot the puck when he has a shooting lane at the net. There was several times last night in the first couple periods when it was still a close game. I don't even think there was a score when it happened. He had clear shooting lanes to the net, had a clear look at the net, and he ended up throwing a pass that got broken up and the puck ended up going the other way. And I understand, Morgan Geekie has 24 goals and he's been really good in the second half, and Pastrnak has played the setup man a lot of the time with him, and that's great. But like, just given the roster that's bereft of offensive talent, really, when you look at it, a guy like him, when he has an opportunity to shoot the puck, needs to shoot the puck. And that's just something he has to do and get into his mind going into these games. 2 shots on net in almost 19 minutes for David Pastrnak last night, and passing up like clear shooting attempts, just not enough, Connor.
Yeah, no, not at all. Especially when you just, again, look at this team right now. You don't really have that next wave of talent behind him that's going to put the puck in the net. And yes, you got Morgan Geekie gets a yet another goal, which, again, he's continued to have a really strong season. And he's one of those guys that you look at for next year as being, again, part of the equation of being a guy that can help pull on the rope and help claw the Bruins out of the current state that they're in. But yeah, as of right now, if you're David Pastrnak, I understand maybe he got the memo that I said earlier where it's like, all right, he's trying to help everyone else out, feel good about their games, build some momentum. But at the end of the day, David Pastrnak's one of the few guys that has the talent to consistently put the puck in the net. And you're just not getting that right now from him. And again, he's trying to do what he can to get everyone involved, and I think he's had a great year in terms of what he's provided this team in terms of his playmaking and leadership on and off the ice. It's been a good year for him, but sometimes it's all about just putting the puck in the net, right?
Yeah, Steve, and getting the team to have that sort of mentality too. Like, if he's shooting the puck when he can shoot the puck, everybody else is going to, instead of everybody making one too many passes and turning the puck over.
Yeah, last night was an instance where I thought he's trying to help his winger out in the arbitration hearing in the summertime. Totally. If it comes to that,
100%. I was thinking the same exact thing when I saw him trying to feed Geekie, Steve. I was thinking the same exact thing.
Yeah, I mean, as Joe Sacco said after the game last night, they can't be trying to look for the perfect play because they're just not built this way right now. They just have to, funnel pucks to the net, play off the shot and all that. And you're right. It's, it should start with Pastrnak. Pastrnak has pretty much, drag them to the edge of the playoff structure, but he's not going to get them there. It would be a miracle right now if they get into the playoffs. But he's got to shoot more. And you can't, I know they were down 2-0, but you can't, if you're a D man like Zadorov, you can't be jumping in. And if you're going down low to get the puck, you got to get the puck. I mean, he left it was a 3-on-1. You were going the other way.
Yep.
But yeah, shooting the puck is paramount right now.
All right. Speaking of Geekie, 24th goal last night. I think he's got 15 goals in his last 31 games or something like that. That whole line's been red hot since January 1, but Geekie definitely has stepped it up offensively. He's going to be an RFA with salary arbitration rights this coming off season. So we have a question from Roger Perry, and I'm going to read this and throw it out to you guys. Hello, Joe. You've mentioned a few times on your show that you think Elias Lindholm's salary, taking up almost $8 million per season against the cap, made it tough for the Bruins to keep another valuable top six forward, Brad Marchand, at a similar rate. Do you think the team may run into the same problem this coming off season when RFA Morgan Geekie is looking for a new contract? Do you think the Bruins will opt for 2-year arbitration with him? Or do you think they'll be willing to offer him 4 years at $7 million per year? And Steve, I'll throw this to you while also saying he's not going to get $7 million a year. I could see him in maybe the $5 to $6 million range. Maybe that would be a really good bump for him. And I think he's definitely going to get a bump, scoring 24 goals and with the season that he's had. But he's not going to be quite in the Elias Lindholm, Brad Marchand salary bracket as of yet.
No, not as an RFA. Where it falls, maybe around the $5 million area. A month ago, I would say sign him, 3 years, $4 million. But, that maybe beyond their means right now. I think he might be looking at a better deal at arbitration at this point, but we'll see. He's gonna cost money because he's a pretty good player.
He will, and it's definitely going to be, I think, closer to 5, somewhere in that range that he's going to get. And they'd be better off even if they could lock him up for more years than the arbitration before they get to that point. But Connor, it's going to be interesting. Do the Bruins steer clear of arbitration now because of what happened with Jeremy Swayman? Is that going to make them gun shy? Going back there with another player that's going to have hard feelings afterwards, and they'll try to get something done because of that. Are they going to continue to take hardline stances like they did with Brad Marchand, where seemingly they walked away from him over $600K a year, which still does not make any sense in the world to me. But how do you see things playing out with Geekie going forward, just based on everything at play here?
Yeah, well, Joe, they've got so much stuff to do this offseason. I feel like they don't want to be in an arbitration hearing because they have 500 other things they have to take care of. Totally. So it is going to be fascinating, right, in terms of, I think that ideally like to get a contract done with him without going through the arbitration route, or, if they can bridge the gap on maybe more of a longer term deal. But it's going to be fascinating to see how the free agent market and everything plays out this year with the cap bumping up, right? Because I feel like all of our preconceived notions of what these guys are going to cost, I was kind of in the same boat as Steve. I'm like, all right, if he signs, 3 years, $4 million, like good bump up in pay, still not like a proven 25, 30 goal guy. But I mean, in free agency this year, like what is a guy like Brock Besser going to get? That's a guy that you looked at a year ago. It's like, maybe 6.5. But he's got 135, 40 goal season. He's probably going to get $7.5 million, which I don't know if I'd pay him that much money, but that's the way the market is growing. What is Nikolai Ehlers going to make? So if Geekie can, and it's going to be interesting how the Bruins determine what the price point is, because this is a guy, Geekie, who last year was a really valuable kind of Swiss Army knife for this team. He's shown this year he can play with David Pastrnak, but for the Bruins, as you're trying to set that price, while also maximizing the cap space that you have this year, which you got a lot, but it can dry up quick if you're hitting out a couple of $5 million contracts at a time. Is he a guy you project as being a 25 goal guy? Is he a guy that you're like, all right, we have to keep him with Pastrnak the entire time to maximize his value? Or does he have even more to give? It's still, you kind of forget that he's just turned 26 years old, that he's still a guy that maybe hasn't hit his ceiling, but how the Bruins do interpret what his value is and what that final contract is going to be, it's going to be interesting. It's kind of like the same thing with the Swayman contract, where I feel like we all were like, oh, maybe he'll get 6.5, maybe something like that, and then gets to 8. I don't think you're going to get a situation like that with Geekie, but from what we first expected to what it might end up being, I think will be surprising just because of how the market is set up this year.
Yeah, and I wouldn't underplay, Connor, the Brock Besser to the Boston Bruins scenario, because that would be another Infinity Stone and Don Sweeney's Infinity Gauntlet from the 2015 first round draft of all the players that they missed when they picked Zborod's edition.
Yes,
he seems to be collecting them like baseball cards or hockey cards as they become available in the market. The Geekie thing is definitely interesting. I think they will be willing to pay a little bit more for him based on a couple of different things. One, I think he has a rugged style of game. Like, he's a big player. He's physical, not overly physical, but definitely physical enough. He will go to the net front. He will battle for pucks and win puck battles. Like, he's kind of a Bruin style player in a lot of things that he does. And I think you notice him even when he's not scoring, which is always like a key thing if you're going to pay a guy a little bit more. Like, that's part of the reason I didn't think DeBrusk was going to get, a lot of money, and the Bruins are going to be willing to pay, because when he wasn't scoring, he wasn't always noticeable. He didn't always factor into the game. I think Geekie kind of does. The other thing, the chemistry with Pastrnak, I think, is hugely important. If you find a guy, and this is what the Tyler Bertuzzi argument was to pay him way back when, was same thing. If you find a guy that plays really well with Pastrnak, that he has good chemistry with, that he enjoys playing with, I think that adds value too. And that's going to, push or force them to maybe pay a little bit more to keep him. But, you also know that the Bruins have to keep some kind of a hard line in negotiations, and probably moving forward. And this probably factored into the Marchand negotiations, that Don Sweeney, when he draws the line in the sand, has to like not cross it because of the Swayman thing, because they got bullied and pushed into that contract. And I continue to think that the Swayman negotiation and the whole Swayman situation, it really had an impact on this year. It really has an impact on, I think, how the Bruins have been doing things since. And it's really, it was a messy situation. It was something, Steve, that I think has colored a lot of different things that they've done since, and certainly how this season has gone. And I think when we look back on it, we're going to feel like this season really started going bad from the moment they traded Linus Ullmark on. That series of cascading decisions from that point on really pushed this season sideways.
Yeah, the era of the team friendly contract for this team is long gone.
Yep.
It started
Yep.
with McAvoy and then Pastrnak, and finally with Swayman, where it actually got ugly. And there hasn't been an ugly negotiation in a long time. Sweeney had to my eyes anyway, had bent over backwards to play nice. Not taking him to arbitration, and not taking the 2-year deal when they did go to arbitration, and it didn't buy him anything. So he ended up paying, actually setting the market for the goaltenders there, and he didn't live up to the contract yet. There's no getting around it. I don't know how people can say, just pay a goalie, $3 million. And yes, you can hit it just right in a player's career where you're paying them a little bit of money, but you can't scrimp on that position. No. This is the first time we've seen the Bruins have subpar goaltending, and look where it's got them.
Yep. It's the easiest and quickest way to submarine a team is to put a goalie in there that is not ready for it or can't, is not up to the task of whatever you put him up to. Universally, when you see the teams that are picking first, second, third, fourth, fifth, the bottom dwellers in all the league, in all the divisions, the teams that don't make the playoffs, it's because their goaltending situation is an absolute mess. Like, it's the easiest way to implode your team. But, I just wonder, Connor, like I said, how the Swayman thing is going to affect them moving forward. And this has had a huge impact on this season and the way things have gone for Swayman and for the rest of the team.
I was going to say, can you imagine if they actually kept him to the arbitration, and it was they had the option for the 2 years. Imagine if they kept him to the 2-year deal, which is a bit of good business, even if probably he wasn't going to be happy about it. You'd have like $36 million in cap space right now, and you'd probably, if you were re-signing him for not $8 million the way he's played this year. So It is funny how that has kind of worked out. And yeah, it is something where for Swayman's camp, you have to be better than what you showed this past year. And as you said, it feels like everything that kind of could have gone wrong has gone wrong this year, and it all kind of started back to that. Like everything has felt off since then. You go from the Swayman debacle, you go to training camp with all these new additions, first day of practice, Elias Lindholm gets hurt, and he's out for 10 days. Like, you go from that to more of the Swayman drama to Jim Montgomery to everything that it just feels like this entire year has been off. So I do think maybe taking a step back and a break is needed for a lot of guys this year. But from the Bruins, now you're operating with this risk and kind of this cloud hanging over you that, like, all right, we've got $28-29 million in cap space. We have to, again, try to retool on the fly, which seems to be their plan. But a lot of it hinges. We can go out and make 2 or 3 hockey trades and get buy low guys that end up being good here, like what the Capitals did, or we can spend that money on a Besser or a Mitch Marner or bring in talent or something like that. And that's all well and good, and you'll be better for it. But it's not going to matter if Jeremy Swayman, your first game of the year against Florida or Tampa Bay or whatever with a better team, gives up 5 goals. You're right back where you were, right? So it is something where the Bruins are, people keep on asking, like, are the Bruins hopeful in Jeremy Swayman bounces back? Well, yeah, they hope so. But if not, they've got a lot bigger issues because Jeremy Swayman with that contract being a pedestrian or subpar goalie is just not going to cut it because you've seen this year, just as Steve said, how much a lackluster goaltender can sink your team, even when things are going right. And for this team, especially where the margin for error is so short because of the lack of scoring talent you have, you need critical saves at critical times. They haven't been there this year for him.
Yeah, it's more than hope. They have to rely on Jeremy Swayman bouncing back next year. Like, just no question about it. He has to be much better. And I expect him to be honest with you. Like, I knew this was going to be a bad year for him based on missing the camp, based on it's the first time he was the number one guy without a clear, like, very talented goalie by his side to, share the workload and the weight, like all of that stuff. You knew going into this, it was going to be bad news. And I think a lot of the veterans did. I think Brad Marchand did. I think that's why he was, like, fairly aggravated about the way things were playing out publicly with Swayman and the way the negotiations were going. Because I think he knew exactly what was going to happen once he tried to come in here after holding out. And it was going to, make the whole season go sideways at the start of the year. I'm not sure he understood how bad it was going to be and what it turned into, and obviously him getting traded to Florida. But, like, I think people that had been around for a while saw that situation in camp and knew it was turning into something that was going to be bad for this team this season. All right, let's take a break real quick to talk about Prize Picks, who never goes bad. Prize Picks is always awesome. They are the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it's super duper simple. So Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite hockey players with players from baseball, basketball, esports, and much more. Here are some picks for this week. Zach Werenski, less than 0.5 assists. Sorry, Zach. Sidney Crosby, more than 12.5 faceoffs won. Quinn Hughes, more than 5.75 minutes time on ice. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also offers Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. The Boston Bruins. What the heck is the name of the show on Nesson where they go behind the scenes with the Bruins? Why am I blanking on it?
Unobstructed Views.
No.
Behind the beam.
Thank you. They had the Bruins video, the trade deadline this week, and we all saw the video of Don walking into the room and announcing to the Brain Trust that Marshy had been traded to Florida. And you hear, "Oh, Jesus," from somebody at the table. And he's
those
giving
collective Bruins fans.
He's given the shake of his soda or coffee or whatever that was. Like, he really did not want to, announce that. Like, he did not feel good about that. Like, it just tells you that they didn't want to do that. Like, it tells you that that is something they were not fully on board with, and was kind of shocking to all of them. I still believe, I really believe the Elias Lindholm contract played a big factor in all of this, because I think that Brad Marchand looks at Lindholm, what he was getting paid, and he's like, you got to pay me at least close to that. Like, if I'm going to come back here on a 3-year deal or a 2-year deal or whatever. And they wouldn't do it. And I feel like a player of Marchand's stature, a player, his importance to the organization, how good he was as a player, I just feel like you had to pay him that. I feel like they lost something as far as esteem, as far as the way other players are going to view them from around the league, taking care of your best players, your guys that have taken pay cuts, that have done everything you've asked over the years. Like, maybe they decided they needed to turn the page and move on. But Connor, I am not going to give them a mulligan very quickly on that, because I think they did damage, honestly, to the franchise and how it's viewed by shipping Marchand out like they did, and the way the whole thing went down. It still leaves a bad taste in, I think, a lot of people's mouths about the whole thing, especially when you watch him and how upset he was, and he didn't want to go. It was very clear after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unfortunate for all parties, right, to not have Marchand finish out his career. And I think from the Bruins' perspective, it's all about what you do with, all right, if you want to turn the page and you want to start a new chapter, and you don't think that contract warranted keeping him around with injury concerns, what have you. And, I get it in terms of, once you sign that guy to an over 35 contract, right? If the wheels fall off or he gets hurt, I know that money kind of sticks, and it's pretty tough to move on from it. So I get the fiscal part of it. I think you're still going to warrant the criticism. It's all about what the Bruins do with that money now, right? Because you look at where the Tampa Bay Lightning were in July, where after they let Stamkos walk, every former player was on Twitter being like, this is embarrassing. Like, Tampa, how dare you? Do you think they have regrets of having Jake Ensel now?
Yeah.
Probably not, right? So
point.
it depends. It's so not saying that, like, I thought Marchand was washed or cashed or anything like that. No, there's value beyond even what he was going to provide. But if you're the Bruins and you are trying to rip the Band-Aid off and trying to be bold in that regard, and it is bold moving on from your captain, but then you take that, what was it going to be, $7 million per year that we're going to use for him, and sign Yoel Armia and Neil Pionk on the back end. All right, does that really move the needle? Now, if you go out and sign Mitch Marner or something like that with that extra money, maybe that changes things, right? But it's all about what the Bruins do, or do they have the cap space to swing a hockey trade and bring in an impact player that does kind of change the momentum of this team? I think it depends on what the Bruins do with this, because if it is just moving on and then, once again, as you said, Joe, try to fix all these holes through free agency and probably overpaying guys, how does that necessarily move the needle? So it all, I think, depends on what the Bruins do this offseason with the money that they now have as a result of not paying their captain.
Yeah, and there's going to be some of that piecemeal free agent approach, though, Connor, I think. Because I think one of the things they did identify and they did realize is that guys like Van Riemsdyk, Shattenkirk, older pro veteran guys brought a lot of leadership to that room a couple of years ago. And they were missing that element a little bit this year with the players that they'd brought in. So there needs to be some of those guys brought in as well. And I'm sure they'll use some money to bring in a couple of those. Foligno, I would put in that category too, like good leaders, good pros, like all of that. So that element is going to be there, or has to be there. And I think they've identified that they need that sort of like long-term veteran steady leadership that supports the other leaders on the team. But to your point, and I think this is a great one, like Don Sweeney and Cam Neely and the rest of that front office, by doing what they did, trading Marchand, trading all those other players, stockpiling all the picks, bringing in prospects, knowing the cap is going significantly up, and now the season that they're having where they went up 4% on ticket prices for people that want to pay very high dollars to go watch this team play, they have put themselves in the crosshairs in a huge way now. Like, they can't blame the coach because they've had coaching changes now. They can't blame the players because they just shipped out the core nucleus that they identified and signed. Like now they're the ones that are on watch, I think, with everybody, that they need to hit home runs. They need to hit on the free agents. They need to hit on the trades. They need to hit on this top 10 pick. This can't be a Dean Latorno that they pick in the first round, and then he goes to Boston College and doesn't score a goal and is barely playing and doesn't look like he's even ready to play in Hockey East. They need to hit on all of this stuff, and if they don't, they're going to be stuck in the middle, and they're going to be in trouble. And I think their job security and what they're doing starts to get called into play. And I think fairly, because they've put themselves in this position now by the moves that they've made, Steve, where they need to hit on all this stuff. This needs to be Don Sweeney's best offseason of his career by a wide margin. They can't have Zadorov, Lindholm type, misses or misidentifications of players or overpays or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, I know he doesn't want to use the term rebuild, but this is what it is. I think there needs to be some patience,
Yep.
or else you don't do what you just did by trading 5 regulars. You need a little bit of patience here. But yeah, you need to get a guy. Maybe the guy you pick has to go back to junior, but he has to be a high producing, high achieving player.
Yeah.
But yeah, in at the July 1, or maybe even at the draft with trades, he's got to get some veterans that are in the prime of their career and turn this thing around, because that's apparently what the mandate is, to get some results fairly quickly. But yeah, it's. This is not going to be easy. He took over a team that didn't make the playoffs, but that was not a rebuild. You had Patrice Bergeron, you had David Krejci, you still had some good years of Zdeno Chara left. So that was not a rebuild. This is a rebuild. I'm sorry. And I know you've got a pretty good defense score when you're healthy. But as we've seen, there's not much after the top 6 guys in your organization. So you need to kind of restock that a little bit too. Maybe get a guy who can who can be a solid 7th defenseman. Parker Wotherspoon is okay there, but you've seen that as his time goes on, he's probably a 4A guy. But yeah, they've got a lot of work to do, and I don't think they're going to do it in 1 year.
No, they're not. It's probably multi-year. You're right. They do have the pieces, though, if they can make some good decisions this summer to at least compete, I think, for a wild card spot.
Yes.
No, definitely not.
It's also see where the coaching goes here.
Yep.
It just feels like that they're going to completely turn the page and hire another coach. It wouldn't shock me if it's Jay Leach, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, no, that's going to be fascinating. Do they go for somebody that's sort of been around, or do they go to somebody on the outside and get a whole different, perspective? I think that's going to be fascinating as well. All right, let's take a break again to talk about our friends at Game Time. Any kind of tickets that you want, any kind of tickets that you need, comedy, concert, theater, sports, anything. With the final stretch run for the Bruins here in the NBA playoffs right around the corner, now is the time to dig into the Game Time Ticket app. The app is super easy to use and has tons of great features for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and all kinds of tickets. All kinds of great features, too. Priority Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, with filters out the fluff and only gives you good deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. There's the all-in pricing. You toggle this feature and it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat Views gets you a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee. I love this. Our Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. What's better than that? Today's super deal is April 1st, Bruins versus Capitals at the Garden. Loge, corner 3, row 7 for $289 a piece. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, create an account on the Game Time app and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Connor?
Game time.
It is game time. That is correct. All right. One last item on the agenda here. Fabian Lysell called up before the road trip. Michael Callahan as well. Didn't play last night, obviously. I'm sure we're going to see him in some games on the road trip. And I would think this is kind of the crossroads time. This is similar to Merkulov got a handful of games this year and even got top 3 looks for a few games as well, or top 6 looks for a few games as well, just to see what he could do in that kind of a role. I would fully expect, Connor, the same thing is going to happen for Lysell, where he's going to get a few games here. He's going to get in a good spot. He should, where he can show exactly what he can do. It may only be for a couple of games, but that should be enough for a player that they're getting their chance to show what they can do, and now is the time. And he's had opportunities in training camps and preseason. He had a game earlier this year where he was okay. I didn't think he was great, but it was a different situation. Like, now is the time for him to show if he's got anything to show, and good on the Bruins for at least giving him this opportunity to do this.
Yeah, the opportunity's here for him now, right? And again, where you're at this stretch with 12 games and there's not a whole lot of consequences at play, yeah, now's the time to, I think, especially a guy like, him, he's in that maybe next wave of guys like Merkulov where you got to figure out just what you have in them.
Yep.
Like, you can make the case that you want to let guys like Patra and Fraser Minton marinate down in Providence, stay with them for that Calder Cup run. Go for it. Get the top minutes down there. Keep them away from, again, what has just been a cursed year. Like, that's fine if you want to do that. Lysell and Merkulov, like, these are guys that I don't want to be going into training camp day one and we have like the Don Sweeney press conference, and because they didn't sign player XYZ, to hear that like, oh, Lysell might have a shot. Like, now's the time to figure out what you have in that type of player. Now, I'm not saying that all of a sudden he's going to play 6-7 games and be a point per game player. That'd be great for the Bruins if that was the case, but you got to at least show that he has something there. And if he doesn't, or if he's kind of like what Merkulov has showed, where, I mean, he's played 10 games and he's had 0 goals and 1 assist. Oh, maybe the Bruins now know, like, all right, this isn't a guy that maybe he's a 4A player. Maybe it's a guy that's not in our long-term plans. Let's see what Lysell can do with the opportunity as well. This is a guy that the skill is there, the speed. They still want him to work on his two-way game. The compete level at times has been called into question. But given this opportunity at hockey's highest level, maybe he runs with it. He clearly, I think, was irked by the fact that he only played 1 game up here. So, all right, if you're annoyed of your circumstances or where you're in, then prove them wrong. And if you can't, then at least the Bruins have the clarity knowing, like, all right, we can't look to a guy like Lysell as someone that could step in next year to supplement our scoring. So I think it's important for Lysell himself, but also the team just to figure out what type of player you have right now. And what better time than these final 12 games where there's not a whole lot to look forward to other than internal development and bumping up those draft odds.
No, 100%. Lysell's 22. He's drafted 4 years ago. Merkulov is 24. They've spent multiple years in the AHL in Providence. Lysell's numbers have regressed this year from last year. He had his best AHL season. It was still only 15 goals and 50 points, which was a decent season. But, he just needs to produce. He needs to show the speed, the skill, the ability to create offense, all the stuff that made him a first-round pick in the first place at the NHL level, which he has really yet to do to this point in his career, Steve. This is kind of the put up or shut up time for both of these guys. And I think maybe the determination's already been made that Merkulov is not big enough, not fast enough to really be an effective player at the NHL level. And now it's Lysell's turn to show if he can prove them wrong, or if he can prove that he belongs, or if not, maybe you move on to the next wave of prospects.
Yeah. If he can't, do anything with this chance, and who knows what this chance is going to look like. But if they do give him a handful of games, and he's like only okay, maybe he's a piece that gets the trade in the offseason done, whatever that is. But yeah, I mean, I thought the game he came up in, it was the Columbus game where they actually the one really good game after the Christmas break. I thought he was a mixed bag. He was good. His speed created the first goal in that game, and then he did a couple of things that you're like, okay, you got to get that out of the game. He had one play where he was like 1-on-4 instead of chipping it in. He turned the puck over. But that was his first NHL game. But yeah, this is, as you say, it's put up or shut up time.
And this is like what we want to see, right? From the Bruins at this time of the year is I'd like to see a few more of these guys that they intermittently in these final 10, 12, 13 games, whatever it is left. Give some of these guys NHL looks so you can make a determination on them and, clear the decks if need be for the next wave of younger guys that are coming through. If you want to bring up a guy, and I understand also, Connor, to your point, they're competing down there and, they want to, looks like they're going to be in the playoffs and at least they're playing meaningful games. And I agree with you. I'm fine with Patra being down there and playing a big role in that team and some of the other younger guys that they've identified probably have a future here, to go down there and experience that. But at the same time, I want to see young guys up for the rest of this year. That's what, pockets of seasons that are kind of meaningless like this for an NHL team that is not going to make the playoffs, you might as well do that.
Yeah, I think you can do the pros and cons, right? And I tend to be more of I get the Bruins line of thinking with the guys Minton and stuff of just not letting them marinate down there, but I probably do lean more for the other, to your stance, Joe, right? Of if you're in this stretch and the Bruins are in uncharted waters right now, right? In terms of where they are in the schedule, the fact they're playing with no consequences, essentially, you're riding out this stretch of games. Why not see what a guy Minton can provide up here, even for a couple of games down the stretch, right? Yep. And again, you're kind of even seeing it with the guys they've added at the deadline who have been given opportunities probably higher up in the lineup, and at least they've shown something, right? I don't know about you guys. I wasn't going through the highlight reels of Marat Hushinadinov before he got here, knowing what exactly he was. But he's a guy that you see the motor he has, and you look at how he was used in Minnesota. You're all right, this is just a solid fourth-line guy, got some speed, and you can maybe put him in the mix with Kastelik next year. Now is he a guy that could play maybe a little bit further up in the lineup if need be? And I think you've only been able to glean that because he's getting 12, 13, 14 minutes a night. And so if you go to a guy like Minton, who is pretty highly regarded as a guy that is a future NHLer, maybe more of a third-line player, but same with Hushinadinov, has a really high motor, good two-way game. And he scores a goal or two and gives Bruins fans something to be excited about and looks like he can build off of the promise that he has, then you feel good about maybe that's a guy that maybe you don't pencil him in right out of the gate in training camp, but you look at these players as guys that throughout next year, as you're trying to right the ship and get back on track, a guy like him, those last couple of games in what has been kind of a meaningless season were the thing that kind of got him on that right track and got him rolling here. So I get both lines of thinking in terms of how they'd want to call up or not call up these younger players. But I would like to see over this stretch here where you have the ability to play these guys 13, 14, 15 minutes a night, seeing what they can provide and what they can do over these final games.
Yeah, I think the Bruins have found something in Hushinadinov. I like him. He's speed, skill, creativity, all that stuff. He's definitely an adventure coverage-wise in the D zone a little bit. You can see
lost
that
his man on the game on the third goal.
Yeah, 100%.
Second
you
goal.
Can see didn't have his stick on the ice, was kind of out of position. You can see that stuff is going on there. But for my money, I think they found something with him that's going to be a usable piece. And I like Jokiharju too. I think he's played well. I think he's been by and large pretty good since they got him, and he may end up playing himself into the picture beyond this year and getting signed there. Steve, your take on quickly on the guys that have come in at the trades and who you've liked the most.
Yeah, I've liked Hushinadinov now that I've learned how to spell his name.
Yeah, he's entered the spell check now. Thankfully.
Yeah. I like his speed. I also like he's got a little bit of jam to him too. He's not afraid to get in there withstand some body contact. Jokiharju, I thought, has kind of settled Zadorov down a little bit, seemingly.
Yep.
And if they can find the key to that, then he'd be worth a contract extension. In Casey Middlestad, it's really hard to judge Casey Middlestad right now. He's looked good on the power play. He probably should be playing with some better players, but this is what he's been given right now. there's only so much he can do if you're basically a setup man with no one to set up.
Yep, I would say, Steve, everybody on the Bruins should be playing with better players. That's kind of a team-wide problem right now. All right, thank you very much, boys. Appreciate it. Let's also thank our sponsors real quick. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Need any kind of tickets whatsoever, go to our friends at Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Connor and Steve?
Game time.
Yes, it is. It is game time. All right, Conor Ryan, Steve Conroy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, you.
Guys.
Everybody else out there, thank you for listening, and we'll see you at the rink.